Good morning, guys. It is Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. This is Bathrobe Business. I got the coffee and I got the news. So, in response to the title of this video, I will get to the major headline of what's happening here in Utah. For those that have seen my previous video on this subject, this is a follow up to that story, but we'll get to that in just a minute. So, today's begins the March Fed meeting. So it's a two-day meeting as usual where the Fed will discuss its usual operations, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody is talking about the dot plot, which is kind of an arbitrary thing. So all the dot plot is where all the Fed chairs, all the president's members get together and try to plan out what the interest rates are going to be for the next 2 years. So this is going out until 2026. I think this is very silly considering the fact that every time the numbers change, we get new predictions. This is just how it used to be when data moved much slower. It's kind of an archaic measure. I also, as we've talked ad nauseum on this channel, I don't think we're getting rate cuts anytime soon. I don't think there's any rate cuts coming this year. If you're routinely tuning into my channel, I've kind of outlined the reasons why. I'm actually making the argument that we might see rate increases before the end of the year. As far as what's more likely, if I was to put money on it, I would say we're more likely to get rises than cuts, given all the information that we've seen coming out. Next story is about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's volatility kind of continues. So Bitcoin has recovered, but at one point this morning, it did hit 61,000. It is at 63 right now. This is very interesting considering a lot of volatility still, despite the fact that it's been quote unquote legitimized, right? Bitcoin is now an ETF. It's a mature commodity, asset, etc. It should be a little bit more stable, but in just about a week's time, we've seen a swing of about $13,000-$15,000. This isn't too surprising because there are people that still privately hold Bitcoin, and I'm sure a lot of them exited once it hit those record highs. And because of that, the price was affected. But still, this is just the usual par for the course for Bitcoin. Its volatility still continues. It swings very high, but then it swings back very low. I wouldn't be surprised if it probably settles down around the 50,000 mark for another year before it makes its next, kind of market rally. Personal prediction, I'm not an expert when it comes to crypto. It's probably the asset I know least about. The most I know about crypto is all the chatter that comes of it. Intel is having some major news in regards to the CHIPS Act. So Intel is going to receive $8.5 billion in direct funding from the CHIPS Act and could receive $11 billion more to manufacture state-of-the-art chips here within the United States. Intel has always developed chips within the United States. It is actually different from companies like NVIDIA, TSMC, etc. Well, I shouldn't say TSMC. I should say AMD and NVIDIA. AMD and NVIDIA both develop chips, but they outsource their production to TSMC in Korea, whereas Intel does have domestic manufacturing. However, in recent years, Intel has lagged drastically. It's pretty much been left in the dust by companies like AMD, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, etc., and has a lot of ground to cover. Even this latest round of funding, it's going to take years to actually show any effect. It's to build new facilities and build out larger facilities, and a lot of them, the construction doesn't even begin until 2027. So this is something that's not going to bear fruit for at least another decade at least. So we'll see what comes of it, but I think Intel is still going to be in trouble for a very long time. It's going to be seen as your grandfather's chip company, if anybody looks at chips that way, but it's going to be seen as your grandfather's chip company that just makes basic PCs. And even that, I think a large portion of that is just going to be held up by software, because like for us as a company, a lot of the complicated software, expensive software that we use is Intel based. We couldn't use AMD if we wanted to, but if that continues to erode, that's where they could really fall off the leaderboard completely and just almost disappear as a company. Remember, IBM used to be a dominant name, and it's barely heard of nowadays. Every year we hear about, IBM's coming back, IBM's coming back. It's been decades, and it hasn't. Despite all the talk of Watson, a little over a decade ago, remember this computer that could beat people at Jeopardy, et cetera, et cetera. They've really made no movement in AI. Who's the names in AI? It's Microsoft, it's OpenAI, Gemini, Google, etc. IBM's really made no progress in this manner. I'm sure there are developments at IBM in regards to AI, but not a lot of it is being yielded on the consumer front. Okay, let's get to the major story of the day. Major League Baseball and NHL is in fact coming to Utah. So a couple weeks ago, I had a video. It was actually my most successful video of all time. It blew up, where we talked about the bills that were within the the Utah Senate in regards to HB 562 and SB 272, which were both $900 million bills to bring the NHL, MLB, and to redevelop a stadium for the NBA here in Utah. I'm going to post the link to that video. I don't want to rehash the same exact thing, so if you're interested in the details of what those bills are, why I'm against them, etc., I'll post a link to that video in the description below. However, I will reiterate a couple things. So, we have now allocated $900 million for one proposal, $900 million for another. That's $1.8 billion going to build stadiums for billionaires. A lot of people always argue with me about this, and when I posted the original video, I got a lot of pushback of, you don't understand, this is going to revitalize Utah, it's going to mean so much more money for taxpayers, etc., etc. Let's look at the trajectory of how these things go. We as taxpayers are getting money taken from us and given to massive corporations so that those corporations then build stadiums, with this abstract notion that that money somehow will redevelop the area and trickle back down to us. However, there's a problem with that scenario. There's no real trajectory of how that money trickles down, because when that stadium is built, that local area's property taxes go up, that local area's leases go up, and so a lot of the businesses that gain from that actually get pushed out. So if you're a restaurant in that area, all of a sudden, yes, you get this massive spike in new revenue coming in, where there's new teams coming into Utah, major games happening, etc., etc. However, your property tax goes up, your lease goes up, you get pushed out, and the only place that can afford to be in that area are national chains. This isn't really a surprise, right? When you go to major stadiums across the United States, a lot of the restaurants you find near stadiums are your Chili's, your Applebee's, your Shake Shacks, etc. These are large chains that can actually afford the rent, the property tax, etc. in those areas. Smaller operations, family-owned establishments, mom-and-pop establishments, locally owned companies can't afford to be in those areas. Furthermore, people that have apartments, that have homes, etc. in that area get pushed out because they also cannot afford to maintain those areas. So that money comes in and it starts trickling up to the state government, but that money never makes its way back to individuals in the community. In addition, let's say I don't own a business. Let's say I just have a regular job and I live and work in Salt Lake City. My money is being taken. How is that money going back to me? There is an abstract notion of how individual businesses will get that money back, right? Oh, it's going to be more spending in your area, etc., which, by the way, also doesn't make sense outside of the hospitality industry, right? If you're a chiropractor, how are more NHL games in your state going to help you? Yeah, maybe one extra person is going to come in because somebody's on a trip to the game and tweaks their back. It needs to come in for an alignment. But let's be honest, there's 1,000 different chiropractors they could choose from. It's just simply luck of the draw. So you've been taxed this much, but you might gain this much in revenue. So really, all the gains from all this new business coming in is entirely tied to the hospitality industry, which again is going to be taken over by major brands that can afford the excess cost in those areas. But let's regress back. Let's say I'm not a business owner. I'm not in the hospitality field. I am just an individual who lives and works in Utah. I have a regular 9-to-5 job. I am now paying for this stadium for billionaires who could afford to do this on their own. I am paying for them to build this stadium. There is no mechanism by which that money comes back to me. If I work at a bank, is this any additional people walking through the front doors of the bank do not mean extra money for me. All it did is took from me my money, my income, taxation, and gave it to larger corporations so that they can enjoy the spoils of my labor. That is what these laws do. Okay? And if you go back to that video, I recommend you scroll through the comments section because I got in an argument with a guy from Minnesota. So in Minnesota, this guy argued with me that they built stadiums, they built NHL and NBA stadiums, and their state government now sits on $2 billion in additional revenue that they wouldn't have. Okay. How is that money back into his pocket? It's not. What it did is it enriched the pockets of the state representatives. If you go look at Minnesota, their cost of living is higher. Their cost of living is higher. Their sorry, I'm stumbling here. Their cost of living is higher. Their crime rate is higher. By every single metric, they're more expensive to live in. However, their average income is pretty much on par with Utah. I think we're coming in at $31,000 per average income in Utah, but with Minnesota, it's at $36,000. So for a $5,000 gain, their quality of life is exponentially lower. Not to mention their property taxes are higher, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So by doing these measures, it creates the illusion that states become richer because their governments become richer, because the cost of land value increases, which in Utah we're already facing that as a crisis, where homes are unaffordable, apartments are unaffordable, and it's exponentially growing. So it's going to exacerbate the existing problem, but it's not going to trickle any of that money back into the pockets of individuals. That man's income in Minnesota did not go up because they built stadiums in his state. The amount of money in his state legislature went up. That's all that happened. They took money from him. They built a stadium. He got no benefit of that. He got none of that money back, but he got all of the cost in regards to loss of income, in regards to chains coming in and stealing local money, in regards to increase in property value, property tax, and probably increased crime as well. So this is the problem I have with these bills, is that they do not benefit individuals in Utah. They benefit large corporations in Utah, not even family-owned corporations. It's just there for the rich. These proposals could easily be done a much better way through bonds. You could have a bond where Utah individuals could invest in those stadiums and then get a return on that investment when that bond is due. And that way this stadium can be built. But $900 million is nothing for people to invest in. If you're a millionaire, billionaire, etc., this could be a fund that could be started by the same corporations that own these stadiums. They could easily raise $900 million to help build their stadium, but instead they're taking that money from individuals in Utah that will never see that money come back and will now pay a toll for the next 20 and 30 years of the damage that this development does to Salt Lake City. So that's my rant for the day. I really hope you go back and watch that original video just to get more clarification on it. It's, yes, more of me ranting, but I think I define much clearer why this is a problem. But now it seems to be official, so it's been signed in by Cox as of, I believe, yesterday. And the proposal will move forward. It's going to be in regards in the area of the Utah State Fair Park as planned and the Power District. So expect your property values to go through the roof, but it'll be short-lived because you won't be able to afford to live in that area much longer. I will see you guys back here tomorrow. I hope you have a productive day. Thanks. Bye-bye.